I was looking at mine, so it looks just like yours, but it's mine. All right, thank you. And thank you for your patience while I learn this.
Oh my goodness, no, you're totally fine. Everybody learns the system at a different pace, and everybody learns differently. And so you're totally fine. And the last thing we want to do is dump more on you when you're already feeling like, oh, the system there's a lot, and you're right, there are a lot of layers, there's a lot of connecting pieces.
This would be not as overwhelming if I didn't have 4 other overwhelming things going on. So it's not just.
Absolutely, I totally understand. All right, well, let's get into this, and I'm going to try to get through the forms training today, which means I might talk a little bit fast, but I am recording, and so I'm going to send you this recording after, and then I've got some resources that you can reference as well after as well. So let's go ahead and get into this. So when we're creating forms in the system, we're just going to be going to our Forms tab and Form List. It's the only place we can access forms, so that makes it really easy. So this is the first area that we're going to be brought to, and it's basically just going to be a list of your forms that will be collected over time. To begin, I want to go ahead and just start by creating a form together, and we're going to go ahead and create the membership application. So to create a new form, I'm just going to select Create a Form. We're going to name this form, and I'm going to name this Membership Application. Now, what you name this form is only what you see. Your members will not see that. So if you want to name it something more descriptive or something kind of shorthand, just to help you know what it is, you can do that in this area.
Okay.
The next step is the form will either be used for membership or for event registration. And so if the form is going to be used for membership, well, let me back up for a second. When we create a new form, there are automatically sections that are built in by default into the form. And so what I mean by that is, like, there's a login section that will always be built into the form. There will always be a summary section where your member can recap the information they provided. There will always be a payment section, a confirmation section. These areas are all built into all of our forms, no matter what type of form it is. But then the body of the form is what can change. So the body of the form is really what determines what type of form we're creating. If we're creating a form for membership, then we would want to go ahead and check this membership box. That's going to automatically bring in the membership section into the form. If we're creating a form for event registration, then I can go ahead and check that we're creating a form for event registration. Same thing, it's just going to bring in the event registration section into the form. We can create a form for neither, which is going to happen probably a lot. So if there's ever a form that you want to create and it doesn't fit into, it's not a membership application, it's not an event registration form, then we're going to check neither, and we're actually going to be able to pull in a general section. So you'll use that for any other type of form that you'll create. Okay. And then lastly, you could use this for both. And so if I check both boxes, it's just going to bring in the membership section and the event section.
So, for example, like my classes, a new person to register for a class, it will not only be a membership application, but a class, right? Yeah.
So if they have to fill out the membership app, like if they have to be a member and they're not already, you might want to give them a membership application to complete before they complete the event registration.
Okay.
Awesome. So since we're creating a membership application, I'm going to go ahead and just check this form will be used for membership. Now, if you mess this area up, if you choose the wrong section or whatever the case may be, you can correct this in the form itself just by manually pulling them in. It's really easy. It's not any more complicated. And so if you mess this part up, don't feel like you have to delete the form and start over. You can still kind of correct it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and select Save. That's going to bring us into the form builder. But before we get into the form builder, I want to go back for just another moment and talk about a couple of other things that you'll see populated now. So at this point, you'll see the membership application that we just created. You'll notice the event status, or I'm sorry, the status is unpublished. We can publish this or archive this. So over time, you're going to have a lot of forms in here. You want to create a new form for every class, for every new event. And so you can archive these forms so that you don't just have a ton building up in this one area. You will always be able to search by archived forms just by checking the Show Archive Form box up here at the top.
Okay.
If we hover over our form, you'll also notice that we can edit our form. That's going to take us back into that form builder that we were just looking at a second ago. Just keep in mind, once a form submission has been made, you will not be able to take fields out of the form. Same thing, once a form submission has been made, you will no longer be able to delete the form. The thought process behind that is that if you have somebody who, basically our forms can grab information from your members and store it in their profiles. And so we can use these forms to help build out your members' demographics. We don't want to delete a form that has been submitted because that's going to delete all that information that you might have collected. And so instead, we just kind of take that ability away from you guys. Same thing with editing. If you've collected somebody's phone number in a phone number field through a form submission, you're not going to be able to go back into that form and delete the phone number. You could add an additional phone number. You could add a new field. You just can't take away any of the fields that people have filled out on the form that would have collected information and stored it in their profile. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to point out you can copy these forms. That's going to be your best friend, since it sounds like you're going to be creating a lot of these. If you just have some templates, you can copy them every time and just make some small edits. And then lastly, you can take this form. So the reason you would want to take the form, let's say that Bob's driving down the road and he's like, oh, I really want to come to that class. I'm just going to call Sarah so she can register me. He gives you a call and says, I really want to register this class. I just don't have time to do it. Can you do this for me? You would come into that form. You would take the form on behalf of him. Basically, it's going to bring up your entire database. You could select his name, or you could proceed as a new profile if they're a new member. And then at that point, you'd be able to take the form on behalf of that individual. So it would be as if you were taking the form as if you were them.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
No. That's cool.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So let's go ahead and select edit. We're going to go back into our form builder. Our form builder is comprised of two different columns. We have a left-hand column and a right-hand column. We're going to go ahead and start by looking at this right-hand column over here. And so this right-hand column is exactly how your form is going to appear on the front end. It's just not pretty yet. But all the fields that you see here will be the same fields that they will see. So I want to go ahead and start by going through the different sections that we have that comprise the right-hand column. And we talked about these sections kind of in the beginning. I said by default, there's a login section. So that's what we see here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a membership section. Anything in this white area, that's what we see here. There's that summary section. We have a payment section and a confirmation section. So to go back through those in a little bit more detail, if we wanted to look at, maybe you for some reason didn't want to use the login section, you could click the properties button for this login section. It's going to show you what we could do to the section that we see here. For instance, I mentioned you might want to turn it off. 10 times out of 10, you're probably going to want to use the login section. The reason why is because that is what recognizes the member's profile. And so that's what allows the information to be stored in their profile, or vice versa. It'll auto-populate information you've already collected on your member into their profile. Or, I'm sorry, into the form. And then it also is what will allow your members to take advantage of member type pricing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You can allow multiple submissions. So if somebody can submit the form more than once, you would allow multiple submissions. The only time I would recommend using that probably would be for donations, right? Not on a donation form, because if your members are donating, they can donate as many times as they want to throughout the year.
Yeah.
I also mentioned in the beginning, so this membership application is the name that we gave to our form when we first created it. But it's not the name that your members will see. The name that your members will see will actually be whatever is in the tab as we navigate to each section.
Okay.
And so they would just see login. If you wanted to change this login title, you could say maybe login please. And then that's what they would see as they moved into this login section.
I like polite.
Any questions on the login section?
No.
Okay. Then we have our membership section. Same thing. We can look at the properties for the membership section, Now we can look over here on the left-hand side under element properties, and this tells us what we can do, what we can customize about the section as a whole. Same thing on that name. Whatever name appears in the section title is what your members will see as they navigate to the membership section of the application. So if you wanted to say membership, that's fine. If you wanted to give a little bit more detail, you could change that. Of course, we want to enable the membership section because that's what we're using this for. Now, do we want to require the membership section? I always turn this on. Otherwise, if you ever see this require membership section, require event section, basically what that's saying is they have the ability to just submit the form without completing anything. That is crazy. So we always want to make sure that we make the section required.
I would guess the only thing I was going to ask about, if somebody doesn't want to become a member and they just want to like sign up to receive our e-newsletter or sign up to receive information, I was thinking about making a form for that, like looking for more information, and then in that case, I would probably not require the membership section, correct?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't even use a membership section for that. So when we first created the form, we checked that box that this is used for membership, that pulled in the membership section. So in that case, I wouldn't even have it available. I would probably just use a general section to collect their information.
Okay.
Display application areas for new users and prospects. Yes, of course, that's what we want to do. But then there's this other option, display renewal area for users that are within the renewal period. And so your members will also be able to take the membership application as a renewal application. The thing about this, and the only thing there is that your members will not be able to take the membership application as a renewal application until they're in their renewal period. What creates the renewal period is that they have to have an open invoice for them for renewal. If there's not an open invoice in the system, then the system doesn't recognize that they're in their renewal period. What triggers the invoice to be created is the notification that goes out.
Okay.
So we have those automatic notifications. The way it'll work is the notifications will start going out. As they go out, the invoices will be created automatically in the system and attached to those notifications. At that time, the member is in their membership renewal period. So if they wanted to take the membership application, instead of just paying the dues invoice from the notification they receive, then they could do that at that time.
So what defines the renewal period?
So we set up, I think, like in the notifications, you wanted the first notification to go out like maybe 3 months before their expiration date or maybe 2 months before their expiration date. I don't remember exactly.
I think it's a month.
A month before. And so at that time, when we turn those on, the system's going to say, oh, it's a month before their expiration date. It's time to send out the first notification with the invoice, creating the invoices in the system, and that puts them in their renewal period. Does that make sense?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay.
What happens when I have somebody who renews manually, like via check earlier than that?
So in each person's profile, there is an option called renew, or there's a drop-down actions button that says renew. You could renew their membership before the notifications go out as a one-off type thing. But if you find that a lot of your members are doing that, I would probably just expand your renewal period, meaning you would have the first notification go out maybe 2 months before their expiration date, or maybe 3 months before their expiration date.
All right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Awesome. So sometimes what my clients will do is they'll have one application for new members, one application for renewal members. And so if the reason why is because the new member application would usually have a lot of verbiage for new members, and there's a confirmation that you can set up, and you usually want to specify that to the new membership. Whereas if it's a renewal membership, then you would want it to be more geared towards, maybe not asking as many detailed questions, just asking a couple of questions, and then you'd want the confirmation email to be in line with renewal versus a new member. So we might want to have 2 different forms. But honestly, a lot of times I don't really see members using the membership application for renewal because it's so easy to pay their renewal dues in the notification they receive.
Okay.
But we can talk more about that. All right, awesome. So that's kind of all about the membership application. And this is where we're going to actually build out our questions. So this is where we're going to be pulling in the different questions. You'll notice we have an organizational piece, and then down here we have an individual. The difference between these is that the organization information is the information on the company. So first they would fill out a profile for the company. Then the individuals would be the linked individuals to the company. So this is information about the person who is linked to the company. Now, if you have an instance where it's just an individual, like if it's not, I think all of your members are family-based, but if you have any for any reason that are only individual, then they would only see the individual section. They wouldn't see the organization.
Yeah, I have about 500 that are family, and then the remaining are individual.
Oh, perfect. So in that case, they would only see the individual section. This organization would go away.
And then if a family, I would have to specify the family name. I think the organization name might confuse people, maybe. I don't know. Can I?
Yeah, definitely.
Is that easy to do?
Yes, that is really easy to do. And I'll show you here in just a moment as we work through how we'll accomplish that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So that's kind of everything that has to do with the section that we're looking at here, the membership section. I think we've covered everything. So then the next thing that we want to look at is our summary section. Our summary section is just going to be like a recap where your members can recap the information that they provided. And so right now we don't have a lot of fields that are on the form. We're going to build those out together in just a bit. But if I go ahead and look at the properties for the summary section, I can turn that on, and then we can edit the summary fields. We can select all. So we're going to want to come back once we've added additional fields so that it incorporates all of the questions that you're asking them in that summary section.
Okay.
Then we have the payment section. This is an area you'll always want to make sure you're filling out. So we can go ahead and look at the same thing. We're just selecting properties. We'll always want to make sure we select our payment processor. We're always going to want to make sure we select our invoice template. And then if they have the ability to come back and pay later, you can turn this toggle on. But if they have to pay at time of form submission, you're going to want to leave it turned off.
Okay.
The last item that we want to take a look at is the confirmation section. So we can look at the properties. Well, there's two different pieces to the confirmation section. I can actually click on the field here that we see in this confirmation section, and that allows us to edit the confirmation page. So we can just edit that text. One of my favorite pieces here is that we can use the merge data tool down here at the bottom of the editor. And we can merge in different fields of information, even information that pertains to the invoice itself. Now, not only is that great, so this page is going to pop up like once the person, at the end, they've finished all the information, they've completed payment, then there's a submit button. Once they hit that submit button, they're going to be brought to this confirmation page. So right now that would just read, thank you, your form has been submitted successfully. And then whatever information you add into that or put into this area. The other part of that is once they close out of that, that kind of confirmation page, you also have the ability to send them a confirmation email. So if we click at the properties for the confirmation section, we can turn on the confirmation email, and then we can edit the confirmation email. Usually I would just recommend copying and pasting whatever verbiage you put on the confirmation page into this email just for consistency. But this can act as a little bit more of a receipt. So I would definitely utilize that merge data information and merge data from the submission balance, submission date, the submission total, invoice number, and then you can put in their first name, their last name, and the member type that they chose. Those are all great items to merge in. So to do that, we would just select the member type and merge that information. Then maybe we might want to enter down and go submission date. And just continue to fill out that information. Now, why I love this area so much is because not only can this act as a receipt to your member, but you'll notice at the top you can add BCC recipients. This is where I would recommend BCCing yourself. You can add up to 10 BCC emails. So it acts as a notification when it comes directly to your email. You're not having to come into this. Yeah, and you can do this for all applications, for any form. And so that way you're not having to wonder, who has registered, what's been going on in the system. And you don't have to come in the system every day to check to see what's going on. You're actually getting these notifications directly to your email. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. I think it's a pretty useful tool. So that kind of completes us walking through each of the sections in detail. Any questions on any of these so far?
I'm wondering, how, so we have membership cards. And so I was thinking about how a confirmation email could also double as like a digital card. And I could have it set up as an option for them to select in the form. And then I wouldn't have to mail them a physical card. Is that possible?
So you could insert like a PDF and then they could like cut it out, or would it just be the sheet of paper that they could print out?
I could do a PDF and they could cut it out. I mean, I know that's kind of chintzy, but I mean, that's what my airline miles people do.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that.
Or have something on their profile page that they could download at any time. Is that easier?
So you could save a copy of their PDF in their profile. That is something that you could do. And then they would have access to it at any time from the front end of their profile. So yes, you could do that as well. That might be, I think both, either. I think either would be fine. The only thing about putting it in the confirmation is obviously I would imagine that it would be member specific.
Yes.
And that means you'd have to like use the data merge tool in here, which might work fine. But probably having like a hard PDF.
Maybe a hard PDF would be good because they could actually download it to their phone.
Yeah, that's very true. So I would maybe just include it as I'll show you where we can add a custom attribute that'll allow you to add files. There's no way for us to import it like in a mass. You would have to kind of add it to each profile individually. But once that's done, and then you're just dealing with new members, that would be really easy for you to add.
I'll have to write that on my notes. Because I would want it to have the expiration date on it for that particular member. That's why the thing kind of came to my mind.
Awesome. And there's no way that the expiration date would update on the card automatically as a saved PDF, because it's basically just a saved image in their profile.
Okay.
So that's where using data merge tools. So instead of saving it, you would kind of like, we might have to think on that. I don't know if
it was just an idea,
Yeah, definitely. We can think more on that, and I can see if I can come up with any solutions. Okay, awesome. So we have completed the right-hand column. We've been through each of the sections. Now let's talk about the left-hand column. Then we're going to actually use the left-hand and right-hand column together. So the first tab, you'll notice that we've got 3 tabs along the top. And the first tab is our form settings tab. And so our form settings tab, anything that you do here, anything that you see in here applies to the form as a whole. So what that means is like the form name, obviously the form name is the name of the entire form. If you added a form description, this would be internal, by the way. That internal description applies to the form as a whole. Form alias. So if you wanted to come directly to this form, which at some point you'll have to when you get ready to test the forms, you would go to MDRA.memberclicks.net / and then whatever the alias is. So to come directly to this form, you would go to MDRA.memberclicks.net / membership-application. And then that would bring you directly to the form on the front end of your website.
Okay.
We can, once again, publish, unpublish, or archive your form in this area. You can turn on a form expiration date. Now, of course, the membership application wouldn't have a form expiration date, but this is something that you could add. This permissions you're going to see all over the website. Basically, this just determines who gets to see the form. So if the form is not accessible for prospects, then you could just uncheck prospects. If it's not accessible for lifetime members or student members or whatever the case may be, you can just uncheck them, and then they would no longer be able to see the form. The next two items you will not be able to use for membership applications. Instead, you would want to use them for an event registration form or a general form. So add date-based pricing basically means that you could set up early bird specials or late fees. And then a discount code I must oftentimes use for sponsor registration. So if you're having an event and sponsors are registering, a lot of times you would give the sponsor a code. If it's for the sponsor, honestly, my associations usually just make it sponsor in all caps. And then you'd set that up in the system. You'd create that discount code. At the end of the form, once they have completed their registration, there's an area that they can add that discount code. So if they put in the discount code correctly, it would give them, the pricing would reflect the discount or zero balance, just depending on what you set up.
It might only be for events. It's not for membership.
Correct. We cannot use that for membership. And then lastly, the forward URL. So once your member submits the form, they see the confirmation page, and there's a button at the bottom that says finish. Once they click finish, by default, they go back to the home page of the website. If you want them to be redirected to a different page of information, then you could just put that URL in this text box down here at the bottom, and that's just going to forward them to a different page, whatever page you specified in this area.
When they're done at with the form?
Correct.
So like the member landing page? Or?
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay.
You could do that. All right. Any questions on this general setting?
I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. So then when we're ready to actually start adding elements to our form, we're going to use the Add Form Elements tab. Now we have 4 different subtypes of form elements that we can add to our form. We have our built-in and our custom attributes. Built-in attributes, we talked about those in the database training. Those are things like organization, physical address, email address, phone number, first name, last name. Custom attributes would have been any of those fields that I would have added in addition based on what you had in your database. Anytime we use built-in or custom attributes on our forms, as long as the login section is turned on, it's going to take the information from the field that they filled out and store it in their profile. Or, like I said earlier, vice versa, it's going to auto-populate from their profile so they don't have to type in information that they've already provided you in the past.
Okay.
So we always want to add our fields to the body of our form. So in this case, that would be this membership section. And some of the questions that you've asked is first name, last name, date of birth, email address. Those are all built-in attributes except for date of birth. So we've already got first name, last name built in. You had date of birth. We know date of birth is a custom attribute, birth date. And I just grabbed and I'm dragging it in.
All right.
Now that brings me to the element properties for the birth date field. I can click on it and it shows me. There's a label. If you didn't want this to read birth date, you wanted it to read date of birth, you would just update it on this label.
Okay.
So we could type in whatever we wanted to. Now the export name, you do have the ability at some point to export all of the form submissions into an Excel file. And so the export name is going to be the column header for that column of information in the Excel file. So you always want to make sure that label and export name are matching.
Okay.
We can make this required.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just adding a time field. We just want to, it won't let me do this. It's a date. So what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a little calendar and they can choose the date from the calendar. You also had email address. So I'm going to go back to Add Form Elements, my built-in built-in attributes and email address, and I can once again just grab and drag.
All right.
Now there are two labels for this option. There's main and additional. Maybe main would be required, so this required looks a little different. Additional, maybe it's just available but not required.
Okay.
Now you asked me earlier, organization name.
I see how you can label it family name or family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can even say like your last name or something like that. Address, phone, same thing. It's a built-in, there's our address. We can make that required. There's also an alternative, so we could make the main required, the alternative available but not required. Phone, add form element, built-ins. We're just going to keep scrolling and we're just going to grab and drag phone. It's really simple. So that covers.
A member, when they are in their member profile, can they change their alternative address to their main address and vice versa?
In their profile, they actually will have the ability to select which one's their primary. So they don't have to swap them. They could just change which one is marked as their primary address.
Some people are like snowbirds, you know, and then they want their magazine shipped to them wherever they're at. So that's the way that they can do that. Okay.
Yep. Awesome. So we've talked about built-in and custom attributes. I explained how this information would be stored and saved in their profile. Now let's talk about form fields. So form fields are a little bit different. These are what we use to create our custom attributes. The reason we would use a form field is because this would not save the information in the member's profile. It would only store it in the form submission. Examples of this would be like if you're having a luncheon and you're asking what do they want for their lunch option? You know, a ham sandwich, a turkey sandwich, or a veggie sandwich. You don't need to know 10 years from now that they had a ham sandwich in 2017, the September luncheon, right? You just need that for the form submission.
Yeah, for my purposes, it would be like people select a size of shirt that they would want for a class.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you would just have them select that size every single time. You wouldn't just have it stored in their profile necessarily, just assuming. You would maybe want to ask them each time. So you would do that via form field. So we've got a couple of different form fields through here. We're actually doing pretty well. We might complete our training. We're going to go through some of these just to show you what these look like. So country, it's just a drop down of all of the country options. So it could be just silly, where was your last family vacation out of state or something. I mean, I don't know a real life application, but just a silly example that would work. You'd want to make sure you put it in the export name as well. And then this would just give them a drop down of all of the countries. You can make it required. You can allow multiple selections. Multiple selections means they could choose more than one country.
I see.
We're going to go back to add form elements. Date is literally just a date field. So it could be what would you like our 2000, what date would work best for our 2017 conference or something like that. And it would just give them a date field to fill in. File. This would allow them to upload a file. So it could say, please upload a list of all family pet names. Maybe you want to know all of their pets. A lot of times I would say like room for them to upload their resume for networking purposes or something like that.
Okay.
Image, same thing. You could say, please upload a headshot, please upload a family photo, however you want to use this field. It's just going to give them the option to upload an image. We're going to skip number and selection set. These are special. We're going to come back to them. State, It's just a drop down of all the states, same thing as country, but it would just be states versus countries. Text would just give them an open text box. Any questions on this so far?
Nope.
Awesome. Number and selection sets. I mentioned these are special. Why? Number would allow them to give just a number. I really don't think that this field's super useful because it can't hold any special characters, spaces. It has to just be numbers, no dashes or anything like that. The reason it is helpful is because you'll notice we've got the required toggle. We also have this price field toggle. If I toggle that on now, we could say, how many tickets do you need to our upcoming event? Maybe they need 5, and it would do 5 times the price of each ticket. Maybe each ticket is $100, or let's say $125. So if they put the number 5 in here, it's going to say 5 times 125, and then that would reflect on, it would trigger an invoice to be created, and that total would reflect on the invoice.
Is this how I would collect a donation?
Great question. So if we were going to do a donation, you'll notice we have a number input. We also have a currency input. If I select currency input down here, now it's just a blank number field. So now you could say, please submit your donation total below, and they can donate whatever amount they want to.
Yeah, so instead of number, I could put in the export name category, like, would you like to enter additional domain? Yeah. Okay, perfect. I see that.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's one other step that we have to fill out once we've added a field on the form that has a monetary value connected to it, and that would be the edit payment processor and revenue account. So you're collecting money, but you haven't told the system where it's going, right? So we always need to make sure we set this up. Otherwise, that money's going to be filtered to just a general revenue account, and that's nasty because then you don't know where the money came from, what it's being used for, what filter it needed to have. So we would select your revenue account. And then we would want to update the invoice line items. So this is how the line item will read on the invoice. You don't want it to read, how much would you like to donate? You would want it to read like donation total or something like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, we're going to go back to our form elements. We're going to go to selection set. This one's a little tiny bit different, but same thought. We can use this to collect money. So you might want to select which lunch option would you like. Make sure we're copying and pasting this into our export name. We can make this required. Boom, there's that price field toggle again. We're going to turn that on. We could use this without using the price field, so keep that in mind as well. We're going to add selections, option limits, and base pricing. So we could say ham sandwich, turkey, veggie. The limits over here are how many people can choose each of these options. If there's no limit, you can leave it 0. But let's say your caterer is only going to make 50 ham sandwiches, only going to make 50 turkey sandwiches, but he said, hey, I'll make you 100 veggie sandwiches. The second a person, the 50th person chooses ham sandwich, that's no longer an option that can be selected. It's just going to be grayed out on the form.
Okay.
So this is probably a more realized example, I would say, is like if you're having a conference and there's only 200 seats available at the conference, you can limit how many people can register for that conference.
Okay.
You can also put in pricing here. So maybe the ham sandwich is $10, the turkey's $10, and the veggie is only $8. Same thing, it's going to trigger an invoice to be created, and it's going to invoice them for the correct amount depending on the option that they selected. Mm-hmm.
I'll need to establish, I'll connect that to a pricing category or whatever.
Yeah, same.
Do them individually, or do they all have to go to the same category?
They'd all have to go to the same category. There's not a way to say, okay, if you choose ham sandwich, it goes into the ham sandwich revenue account. If you choose turkey, it goes into the turkey revenue account. If you choose veggie, it goes into the veggie revenue account. It would actually, that whole option, that whole field would filter into one revenue account.
All right, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then same thing. You're going to put in, you don't want to say which lunch option would you like. You would say like lunch total or lunch fee or something like that. And then also, so you'll see the pricing on the form. You could just turn that off. So now maybe the lunch was included. Now there's no pricing associated with it. It's just the options that they would choose from. Another thing that you could do, you'll notice there's a display type down here. You could give them the opportunity. So single select means they could choose one, either ham, turkey, or veggie. Single select drop down, same thing. They can only choose one. This would be useful if you have a ton of options. So instead of it being these radio buttons all the way down the page, it would be a drop down that would show the options, and then it can close back up after they choose them.
Okay.
Multiple select means they could choose multiple. So the check boxes, multiple select, maybe I could have a ham sandwich and a veggie sandwich. And if I'm paying, exactly. Same thing, multiple select means they can choose more than one, but it's a drop down. So if there's a ton of options, it's not taking up, a ton of space on the form. One other thing that I want to talk about here is member type pricing. So now that we've put the base pricing on the form, we can set up exception pricing. So member type pricing means we're just going to click in our big rectangle up here. And maybe the individuals, we can choose more than one at a time. Individual 2-year, lifetime, sustaining. Maybe these kind of individual guys, we just add that column. Maybe they get to pay a little bit less. So you can put in the exception pricing. So if my member type is logged in as one of these member types, individual 2-year, lifetime, or sustaining, I would only see this pricing that we just set up as exceptions. I wouldn't see the base price.
Can I set up member type pricing? Can the rule be an attribute?
No.
Okay.
Like what? Maybe provide an example.
People that are part of the MDRA team get discounted pricing on merchandise.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to do that by attribute, but what you could do is create another group called the MDRA team, because this is technically, actually, I think I lied. Yeah, this is only member types. It's not done by groups.
But I could offer them a discount code.
Yes, you sure could.
Okay.
So you can set up as many of these as you want to. Maybe prospect public have to pay more.
All right.
And then you would just save that. There's one other thing that I want to get through. Do you have like 5 more minutes?
I do.
Okay. The only other thing that I want to go through is this presentation tab. We've talked about built-ins and customs. We talked about form fields. That's not saved in the form submission. That's not saved in the member's profile, only in the form submission. Then we have presentation items. I mentioned in the beginning, if you messed up those check boxes, you can manually drag in the event section or the general section. This is how you would do that. You would just grab and drag. You'll notice it tells me, nope, can't put it in here, but it shows me the green area I can put it in.
Got it.
Same thing with general section. And then the rest of these just have to do with how the form presents itself, the presentation. So horizontal line, literally just a horizontal line. It's a great separator. A label, we would use a label for description or directions. So we could say, we could edit the label text and say, choose all that apply. Maybe if it's one where it's a multiple select or something. Also a great place to add disclaimers or, please note, as of this specific date, no refunds of your purchase will be available, or, something like that.
Okay.
Page break. So page breaks are typically already added in by default. The only time you really want to add these in manually is like if you're making a general form. Sometimes what I see is my associations will have a survey after a conference that they'll send out. And it'll be, how was the speaker? How was the food? How was the venue? How was how's the organization? How are the decorations? Sometimes it can end up being like 30 questions long. You don't want just this huge long form that's going on forever and ever and ever. So instead you could add some manual page breaks, maybe between every 5th question. So you'd see 5 questions and then you have to hit next. Then it would bring you to the next page of the next 5 questions and you would hit next. So that's how you would use page breaks. Like I said, probably really you would only want to use this for a general form.
Okay.
Lastly, white space, just a separator once again. So if you needed a little bit of extra space between, boom. Okay?
I see that, yes.
Yep, just a separator.
Is there a preview? Like
of
how
the form?
Yeah. Or I would just go to the web page that it's on.
Well, you would, to test our forms, what I would recommend, the easiest way I think, is using an incognito window. Have you used incognito windows before?
No.
So if you use Chrome, Chrome is what I work in. I think it's the best browser for the website, for the back-end experience. Mine's got this little yellow exclamation kind of looking mark. Sometimes it's 3 little stacked dots on top of each other. You can click it, and then there's the new incognito window option. Also, life tip, if you fly a lot, based on your flight searches, different websites will jack up the pricing because it recognizes that you're searching for plane tickets. And so if you use an incognito window, it prevents them from being able to do that. I just booked a trip to Switzerland, and I had been searching, and I looked at a price, and it was like $880 one day. I came back the next day, and it was like $1,200. But then I used the incognito window, and I went back to do the regular search, and it was still at the $880 price. So they're very sneaky. So anyways, we would open up the incognito window. Now, I mentioned earlier the alias, right? So if you wanted to get to this specific form, you'd have to go to MDRA.memberclicks, memberclicks.net, not MC-admin. I want to go to membership-application. Now, this is not published.
I see.
Boom, there's the login. And then so this is exactly what your members are going to see. Don't put in your admin credentials. You're not able to test forms as an admin because it's kind of like, wait, what are you doing? You're an admin. So instead, you would just want to create a new account, put in a random email. It doesn't have to be real.
Well, I'm also a member, so I would probably log in with my member number.
You could, but remember, you wouldn't be able to test the membership application unless you're in your renewal period.
Address?
Huh?
If it's a different email address?
You won't be able to test your membership application at all if you're logging in as a member.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, you can't take the membership application as an existing member unless you're in your renewal period. In order for you to be in your renewal period, you have to basically have received the notification with the attached invoice, which then tells you you're in your renewal period.
Okay.
And you wouldn't have that. So I would recommend just logging in as a new user, put test somewhere in the fake user account. It's going to prompt you to create a password. It can be as simple as the number 1, and then you'll be able to go through the membership application just as a new user would go through it. You'll test your other forms the same way. So when they're completed, I'll let you know. And you'll do the same thing. You'll use the alias to access the form, get into the login section, and just log in as a new user every time.
All right.
And then that's how you can preview it. And then obviously you can publish these, but your members won't be able to access them unless they're linked somewhere on the front end of your site. So you can be testing these as much as you want to on the back end, and then when you're ready for it to go live, that's when you would need to put it somewhere on the site, either link it to a menu item, to the quick links menu, wherever it may be. We'll talk about that on our content training next time.
Okay.
And we can do an example together. And that is everything I have today. Any kind of other questions that you might have for me?
No, not right now.